The funniest meltdown I've ever had was in college when I got so overstimulated that I could not speak, including over text. One of my friends was trying to talk me through it, but I was solely using emojis because they were easier than trying to come up with words. So he started using primarily emojis as well, just to make things feel balanced. This was not the most effective strategy until he tried to ask me, "You okay?" But the way he chose to do that was by sending DA-ing. And I was so shocked by suddenly being asked if I was down to F that I was like, "What? What did you just say to me?" And thus was verbal again.
I never knew the reason the nephews were left with Scrooge was because Donald had to literally go off with the Navy. Like, I thought the sailor getup was for show. It didn't occur to me that Donald was with the US Armed Forces. Thank you, Conald, for keeping our country safe. He also fought in the war, hence his short temper. No joke, Disney confirmed this in a comic of Donald sleepwalking, then being woke up by firecrackers, which he believes his mind's in a minefield. No joke. The US government promoted Donald Duck to the rank of sergeant and gave him an honorable discharge from the military in 1984, in honor of his animated propaganda, participation in World War II. My history of animation professor told us that he had to fill out special forms to look at and receive Donald Duck's US military history, at which point he mentioned how he had to take a step back from his life and question all of his choices. The frick?
DNA analyses taken in 2003 are claimed to have revealed traces of blood from at least 4 other people on his gear, 1 from his knife, 2 from a single arrowhead in his quiver, and a 4th from his coat. Interpretations of these findings are that Ötzi killed 2 people with the same arrow and was able to retrieve it on both occasions, and the blood on his coat was from a wounded comrade he may have carried over his back. Ötzi's posture in death, frozen body, face down, left arm bent across the chest, could support a hypothesis that before death occurred and rigor mortis set in, the Iceman was turned onto his belly in the effort to remove the arrow shaft. The Cambridge world. Actually, mad respect, he was a machine.
Somebody made a Steam game where you can really play the fake games from those mobile game ads. Yeah, you want those games, right? So here you go. Now let's see you clear them.
What's the name?
That is the name.
I never knew the reason the nephews were left with Scrooge was because Donald had to literally go off with the Navy. Like, I thought the sailor getup was for show. It didn't occur to me that Donald was with the US Armed Forces. Thank you, Conald, for keeping our country safe. He also fought in the war, hence his short temper. No joke, Disney confirmed this in a comic of Donald sleepwalking, then being woke up by firecrackers, which he believes his mind's in a minefield. No joke. The US government promoted Donald Duck to the rank of sergeant and gave him an honorable discharge from the military in 1984, in honor of his animated propaganda, participation in World War II. My history of animation professor told us that he had to fill out special forms to look at and receive Donald Duck's US military history, at which point he mentioned how he had to take a step back from his life and question all of his choices. The frick?
This actually reminds me of when I was in 2nd grade and it was snack time, but we had been misbehaving, so they gave us assigned seats on the rug, and I had to sit next to this girl whose snack was mangoes, but I didn't like her because she bullied me. So I told the teacher that I was allergic to mangoes and I couldn't sit next to her, and my teacher was like, "Oh, it doesn't say anything about any food allergies on this paper right here. You might have to update the school nurse on that." So I went to the school nurse's office and she called my mom, and my mom was like, and I genuinely have no idea why, but my mom was like, "Yeah, sure, she's allergic to mangoes." So then the school had on paper that I was allergic to mangoes. So at this point, I was like in way too deep, so I just pretended to be allergic to mangoes for the next 5 years. Like, I went full throttle into this lie. I even came up with a backstory to explain how I found out I was allergic to mangoes. It got to the point where even my parents just genuinely believed I was allergic to mangoes, until one day when I was 12, I just came clean and explained the story to my parents, and they were like, "Yeah, that sounds like something you do." But anyway, I never got to enjoy my newfound mango freedom until about a year later when I was over at my friend's house and they had mangoes. And I was like, "Actually, I haven't had a mango in 6 years." And they were like, "Oh my God, they're so good. You have to try some." So I did, and they were so, so good. Like, I look exactly like the picture above. I was gobbling that up like Cookie Monster. It was insane. And anyway, basically 20 minutes later, I broke out in hives.
I finished Portal and immediately went to eBay and ordered Portal 2. I cannot wait to hang out with that wretched Steven Merchant ball that people were obsessed with 10 years ago. I've been playing for about half an hour and have come to the conclusion that I would die for this little sphere guy.
Last month, I made a new coworker repeatedly guess what astrology sign I was by simply refusing to cooperate and tell him my birthday, and repeatedly telling him, "I don't want to be categorized by those kinds of assumptions. Just get to know me as a person and not one of like 12 categories." And he kept going, "That's such an Aries thing to say. I know these things. I can always tell because I'm a really intuitive Cancer. Maybe you're a Capricorn because you're being so argumentative," etc., etc. He would not drop it and kept coming at me from all different angles to try and guess what sign I actually was, no matter how many times I told him that I wanted to opt out of the whole game. Finally, he went
went off on a tangent about his own incredible powers of empathy and deduction and how he was never wrong because he was a moon cusp double backflip whatever the frig Cancer, and it gave him special powers, etc., and mentioned his particular birth date, and I started laughing because holy crap. I said, okay, all right, you got me. I'll play ball. You get one last chance to guess my friggin' sign. Well, he guessed twice and struck out both times, guessed one more time, even more confidently and incorrectly, and I pulled out my ID and handed it over. Me and Mr. Intuitive Never Missed Deluxe Cancer Donkey had the exact same 4th of July birthday.
Honey is vegan. I don't really care if a bee is like, where's all the honey I've been making? They probably get over it really fast. Their brains are very small. Bees choose to live in the box where they know damn well that a large fraction of the honey will periodically be removed, instead of simply leaving that place like they are perfectly able to do, because the human box comes with an invulnerable titan to guard them against all threats. The bees consider the payment offered to this colossal mercenary to be a pretty good deal. Bees know about supply and demand. Protection money, protection honey. Can we talk about how in zombie shows, movies, or books, they always find a veterinarian and not a surgeon? Are veterinarians deemed more likely to survive the apocalypse? Yep. One of our professional skills is not being bitten by patients. We actually have a good, broad knowledge base for both surgical, medical, and GP things. We're used to improvising equipment because a lot of stuff is just not made for animals. Meat safety is part of our training. Our cars are often full of equipment, especially in mixed practice. We probably weren't in the human hospital at the initial outbreak. This post is deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant as certified by the National Shitpost Registry.
I finished Portal and immediately went to eBay and ordered Portal 2. I cannot wait to hang out with that wretched Stephen Merchant ball that people were obsessed with 10 years ago. I've been playing for about half an hour and have come to the conclusion that I would die for this little sphere guy.
Learning a language with a completely different writing system is such a fun experience because the second they change the font, you're absolutely doomed. Back in high school, I had a pen pal from Greece with the most beautiful handwriting I'd ever seen. She taught me the basics, and eventually, we started writing almost entirely in Greek. This was a big deal because at the time, Google Translate wasn't a thing. Fast forward to my junior year of college, I took classical Greek for my degree and felt so confident. My classmates' Greek handwriting looked like it was written by toddlers, but mine, smooth, elegant. I turned in my first assignment feeling ridiculously proud. 3 assignments in, my professor pulled me aside, trying so hard not to laugh. I appreciate the effort, but you know how middle schoolers go through that phase where they put curly tails on G's, swoopy Y's, or dot their I's with hearts? Yeah. Turns out the elegant little flourishes I'd been adding weren't actually part of the letters. My pen pal had just been in that phase when she taught me the alphabet. Light Yagami is so freaking stupid. In like a month, they narrowed it down from like, it could be anyone in the world, to it could be anyone in Japan, to it could be any student in the Kanto region, to it's honestly probably one of the family members of these 2 policemen. And my God, this man's son is so freaking weird. What's wrong with him? Like honestly, I think Elle should have just taken the risk and hit Light with a car one day and be like, funny how the Kira murders stopped, right? This policeman's son got hit by a car. I asked my chauffeur to drive into him. Funny how that works out. Death Note. Death Note if Elle risked it all and hit Light with a car.
New type of parking enforcement on my campus, replacing the boot, appropriately named the Barnacle. I have 6 of these in my garage. TLDR, turn your defrost on for 15 minutes and you can break the seal with a credit card. Just leave it there so you don't get in trouble. So I max the defrost on my trusty hybrid, grab a tool bag from inside, and ignoring the red Helvetica bold instructions, pop the crustacean off with little effort. It begins to whine, begging me to concede to the man, but instead, I quickly bring it in the apartment, puncture the speaker with a flathead, and begin disassembly. IRC, it only uses Phillips screws, Torx security bolts, and intimidation to prevent you from owning your own barnacle. But it gets better. The SIM cards this particular company was using for the GPS function had unlimited data, so I began to tether off of the barnacle's connection. It took them several months to disconnect the service. Amazing. Become ungovernable.
Character has frost powers. Me is, your backstory is family-related trauma, isn't it? Frost powers, family trauma. Fire powers, electric powers, rebellious. Earth powers, mean or dumb. Nature powers, social outcast. Water powers, nice but pretentious. Psychic powers, white girl. What is Frozen's family trauma? His wife put away his super suit.
Genies can only grant wishes that are things that an ordinary person could do, just better and faster. The Jinn are the creations of a divine being, and so they are part of the divine plan and cannot defy the natural order of things. A wish granted by a genie can't turn the day into night or the sea into yogurt, but if you wish for a temple to be built, a genie will build it by hand, the way men do, and have it done in a day. If you need a wish granted that defies the natural order, you gotta catch a leprechaun, because no god was involved in their creation whatsoever. They just kind of showed up one day in the 19th century. The IOC have no idea what their deal is.
Okay, so there's a game me and my friends play called Don't Get Me Started, and basically someone gives another person a random topic, and they have to go on an angry rant about it, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to us at parties and car rides. So I highly recommend playing sometimes with your friends. I love this idea. We used to do things like this in Improv. Related game, think about it. You're given a random topic, and your job is to build it into an epic conspiracy theory. The crazier, the better. You end your rant with a serious face and the command that your listeners think about it. Another related game, Illuminati, similar to Think About It, except you are given two completely different topics, and you have to connect them to each other in a wild conspiracy rant. RB to safe and awkward hangout. Me and my friends play World's Greatest Expert, where one of the other players says, "Hey, I heard you're the world's greatest expert on," and you have to give an in-depth and probably completely false lecture about the thing you're the greatest expert on. Other players are allowed to ask you questions. The version I learned was, "Ah, yes," in which someone gives you a work of art or famous landmark, and you go, "Ah, yes," in a posh accent while making up the most wildly inaccurate history of the topic. Bonus points for how hard everyone laughs.
Popular YouTube channels are great and informative until they make a video about a topic you're informed on, and then the house of cards comes crashing down as you realize how utterly wrong they are about most things. He talks about electric cars. I don't know anything about cars, so when people said he was a genius, I figured he must be a genius. Then he talked about rockets. I don't know anything about rockets, so when people said he was a genius, I figured he must be a genius. Now he talks about software. I happen to know a lot about software, and Elon Musk is saying the stupidest things I've ever heard anyone say. So when people say he's a genius, I figure I should stay the hell away from his cars and rockets.
Imagine being in a bar overhearing an argument between two guys calling each other morons, and one of them says, "I speak 12 languages, and you barely speak one. Don't you call me stupid?" and lists 12 languages, and one of them happens to be your native language. So you chime in like, "Really? You speak Swahili?" And the dude answers, in a very polite wording with perfect grammar and pretty good pronunciation, "I don't actually speak Swahili, but please don't expose and embarrass me," and carries on arguing with the guy who has no idea what he just said.
Last night, I dreamed that someone invented a new version of chess called Rookmeo and Juliet, where two rooks are in love and trying to run away together. To achieve this, they have to make it to the other side of the board. But these rooks don't have any visible signs to differentiate them from the rest, just a small mark in their base. Neither of the players knows what rook from the other side is in love with their rook, so they have to play a regular game of chess, fully aware that they might unknowingly kill the lover of their rook. If they kill it, the game keeps going, but their rook betrays them, switches sides, and turns into a second queen for the other player. People wrote a ton of essays about the symbolism and metaphors of that version of chess, and the creator didn't have the heart to tell them that he simply invented it because he thought Rookmeo was a great pun.
Top 5 women? Bro, I can't even top 1 woman. 2 drums and a cymbal fall from the ceiling, killing me instantly. You couldn't even name 5 women. Apologize! Apologize to women. I tried to, but all the ones I asked told me they already had names.
Snowflake students claim Frankenstein's monster was misunderstood and is in fact a victim. But that's the book. That's what the book is about. Victor Frankenstein, I've created life, but I refuse to put any effort into helping that life develop. I won't teach him, love him, or defend him, even though I forced him into existence with a fully operational adult brain. Lol. Peace, fam. The monster, am eloquent, baby. Boomers, he's not the victim, he's the monster. An ironic parallel considering the idea of tough love parenting that plenty of boomers like to use. If they buy into the idea that their kids just have to toughen up and face the real world without guidance or emotional support, I'm sure it does scare them to read a story where someone who wasn't given any support began to resent their creator and turn on them. It's like that post that's like, knowledge is knowing that Frankenstein is the doctor. Wisdom is knowing that Frankenstein is the monster. Like the whole point of the post is that Frankenstein's monster is a victim of Victor Frankenstein's own monstrosity. Mary Shelley did not lose her virginity on her mother's grave just for people to misunderstand her best-known work over a century later.
Minecraft, for the last few years, has had maybe the most confused development direction of all time. There's one guy at Minecraft who is under the impression they are making an educational game to teach kids about different types of igneous rocks and what foods are bad for what animals. And another guy at Minecraft who is under the impression he's making Skyrim Remastered Blocks Edition. And one guy who has watched YouTubers and is under the impression they're designing Industrial Slaughter Simulator 2024. And all of them live in separate offices and add their uptrades independently of each other and don't know the others exist.
I'm not a classicist, but I suspect one of the reasons so many of the Greek gods are portrayed so unflatteringly was less because they were seen as villains than because they represented their domains. Of course Zeus sometimes misuses his power. That's what a king does. Of course Artemis's wrath is wild and painful. That's what nature can be. Of course Hades snatched away a young girl from her mother's arms. That's what death does. This is one of the reasons call-out posts for some gods comparing them negatively to nicer gods are kind of missing the point. As someone who is partially a classicist, this is a better analysis of Greek mythology as a whole than 99.95% of the takes I've seen on here, and a substantial number of the takes I've seen in academia.
Plays Assassin's Creed to study for my AP history exam. This is actually really funny. In high school, my humanities teacher told us a story about one of the Europe trips he had gone on with the school a few summers past. So him and the group of kids were in the middle of Rome, and the tour guide had gotten lost. They could figure out how to get to some church they were going to see. All of a sudden, one of the students, call attention to himself. He says he knows where to go and just start walking around the streets, taking back roads and side streets, and within 20 minutes, they're at the church they needed to get to. My teacher asks the kid if he has ever been to Italy before. He says no, he just knew where to go because he played Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I've been looking for this.
The forbidden pool. Every so often a note will blow through my notice telling me, actually, the water is only radioactive at the bottom, so it's perfectly safe to swim here. Yeah, swim in the reactor pool, see if I care. So, as far as swimming safety goes, the bottom line is that you'd probably be okay as long as you didn't dive to the bottom or pick up anything strange. But just to be sure, I got in touch with a friend of mine who works at a research reactor and asked him what he thought would happen to you if you tried to swim in their radiation containment pool. In our reactor? He thought about it for a moment. You'd die pretty quickly before reaching the water from gunshot wounds.